Good morning and welcome to today's episode of Coffee with Bobbi. Today I am joined with Sam Henderson. Sam found his love for coffee while backpacking Southeast Asia in his early 20s. He planned to start a coffee cart, but an unexpected trip to Rwanda put his coffee dreams on the back burner. When he came back home to Arizona, he picked up his dreams of having his coffee business by getting a job as a roaster in Scottsdale, Arizona. After a few years of being plugged into the Arizona coffee culture and learning more about the industry, he launched the first phase of his coffee dreams, Hendy's Coffee Box, a monthly subscription box sharing the best beans from Arizona roasters with coffee lovers around the world. Welcome to the show today, Sam. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Bobbi. I'm on Coffee with Bobbi. This is exciting. I've made it. This is phase 2 of my coffee dream, make it on Coffee with Bobbi. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. You know, when we connected, this was such a joy. I love coffee. I love connecting with people. And when I heard what you were doing with Hendy's Coffee Boxes, I was like, I am totally in. I love it. So yeah, I'm excited to do the first ever coffee tasting on Coffee with Bobbi today.
I am very happy to be involved with that. So let's dive into it, and then we can just start talking. So you got in your Hendy's Coffee Box, which I'm glad you like it. It was very fun. You got some of one of my roasting partners is Novela Coffee, run by Melissa and Ruben, like out of their house in Phoenix. Great friends. They roast some of my favorite Mexican coffee that I've ever had. And so this is one of their Mexican coffee from Oaxaca. So let me grab I have a handle for my grinder. It's in here somewhere. There we go. So yeah. Did you smell it yet? Have you gotten a chance to smell it?
I did. This smells amazing. I actually opened it up this morning and I didn't brew it yet. Well, I just brewed this cup that I haven't really tried yet. But my brother was over at the house and I was like, smell his coffee. It's so good. And he's like, what are you on today?
You're like, it's just coffee, okay? There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, it's yeah. They roast all, I'll go and see their little roasting setup in their garage. It's quite the feat. It's like a little 5-pound little roaster. And Ruben just, I'll shoot a message on Instagram or text and say, hey, can I get 4 bags of this, of that, and he does it. And it's I love these stickers. This is somewhat of a kind of a rebrand, as I understand it. They had another like logo were used, and then one of their buddies like made this logo, and they've just like 6 months, and I think this looks so cool. So
yeah, I'm
always happy. I almost wear my Novela shirt here too.
Yeah, and then for those of you watching, like here are the beans. They're a drier. They're not as oily as some of the beans, but they smell amazing.
Oh yeah. The reason for that, I'm going to keep this away from my microphone, is, Ruben and Melissa do a lot of medium roasted coffee. Being a kind of a small roaster, they don't, like a big giant roaster can do a dark roast. Dark roasted coffee won't last as long. And so if you're a big roaster that's going through it, you can afford to kind of do a dark roast. But if you need coffee to last an extra week or two on the back end, until somebody buys it, or you're doing wholesale to a restaurant and they're just not going through it as much, medium roast is perfect. And medium roast as well does it keeps some of the natural flavors. We can go into any questions you have, Bobbi. I am more than willing to answer it on roasting, on brew methods. We're doing my favorite brew method, which is the Chemex. Bobbi was nice enough to agree to doing a Chemex with me. So yeah.
I love the Chemex. And a quick story on the Chemex. We were actually in Boston a couple of months ago and at our friend's place, and he had just moved into a new townhouse condo. And I was like, where's the coffee pot? He's like, I go to the local store every day. And I'm like, how can you not have like
Yeah.
anything to brew coffee with. And he was like, well, it's just like the convenience store. Like the next moment, I was like, I am
We need
purchasing on
it.
Amazon for you. Chemex, it's coming
Yeah.
in the mail. I'm picking up new coffee beans. And like he even converted. He like texted us.
Good.
It was like, you wouldn't believe it, guys. I made another pot of coffee.
Yeah, I think it's, the Chemex, my first Chemex was at a local coffee shop around here. I had like a pour over type deal forever. But to actually get it like at a shop, which completely blew my mind because I was just doing it by myself. And I like to consider myself a professional, but you go into a coffee shop and there's a barista there. There's some part of you that's like, they know what they're doing, and maybe I don't, because at this point I was just doing everything at home. And they made me a Chemex, like a pour over. They brought the whole thing over on a tray. They sat it down on my table. I'm like, wow, this is great. And it was really good. It was rich flavor. And so I said, I got to give myself one of these. And so I did. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So to sort of differentiate for people who are watching, like what is the difference for you between the flavor profile of brewing it in a Chemex versus a French press for strip?
Yeah. So coffee always has some natural flavors in it. And the brew method changes kind of how hard those flavors hit in a way. So a Chemex like this, where the water, and we'll do it, pours over, it's a kind of a pour over method. The water and the beans or the grinds don't really like hang out for as long. And because there's a paper filter, the metal filter, it really kind of, it filters it out truly. And so you get a cleaner taste of what the coffee profile is. A French press uses something called an infusion method. And so the beans and the grinds and the waters like hang out and they really mix together. And then when you push it down and separate the water and the grinds, you get more of like a heavier kind of hard hitting flavor because they've just hung out for so long. And the way that, you stop that from becoming overwhelming is you grind that coarser. So it's a fine balance between how thin your filter is, something somewhat medium, coarse, thin like this, versus a French press, which is you need thicker grinds for, because they're hanging out together. They're going to spend more time together anyway. So
Right,
it's
for sure.
very interesting. Coffee's so much fun.
And what sort of got you
Yeah.
into?
So
Oh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I've been building my palette, my coffee palette for like the last 3-4 years. Pour over is my favorite method of doing that because it gives me that clean, more. It's great. French press is like a heavy hitter. Like I'll make it at night if I've got a long night. It's a deeper flavor, but you don't get any of those higher kind of fruity notes that you might get with just a pour over. So you were saying, what was your question?
Oh, I was gonna start saying, as you're still grinding those beans over there, how did you get into your love of coffee?
So that was with the introduction of my backpacking journeys. I was in Southeast Asia, specifically at this point, I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I was working as a magazine editor. And I did a whole bunch of writing stories. So those like fish tanks where you stick your feet in it and like the fish eat all the dead skin. It's rejuvenating or something. I did it. It felt real weird, but I did it, for the story. And so I wrote that. I did a couple other stories. And the magazine owner, Patty, said, "Hey, I like your stuff. Do you want to just like write a story by yourself? Like a cover story, this big like 2-page spread." And I said, "Sure. What should I write on?" She said, "You can write about anything." And I said, "Oh, that's a lot of pressure." And so I decided that I was walking around Chiang Mai. I never really drank coffee up to that point. But I noticed there was like coffee shops popping up every other weekend and none of them were shut down. And I took like a semester of economics while I was in college. And so I kind of understood supply and demand, where it was, well, either that's broken or there's enough demand to sustain the supply of all this coffee. And I looked into it. I did some research into kind of the Asian growth of coffee demand. and it was expanding, like it was huge. And so I was like, this could be a possible business opportunity for me, is to start a little coffee shop thing type cart, everything over there's like food carts. So I was like, maybe I'll do like a coffee cart and start that. So that's how I got into it, is from writing it in a story.
Oh, that's awesome. How long did you spend in Southeast Asia?
I was there for about a year, and then I went to Rwanda for a year. So I spent about almost 2 years backpacking.
Uh-huh.
It was nice. So it was, I was in college. I wasn't super happy with, I just didn't really know what I was doing. It wasn't that I wasn't having fun. I was doing stand-up comedy. I helped, found a fraternity. I had a good group of friends, but I was a little scared that at the end of the 4 years, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I wanted to know what I was going to do. So I took a kind of hard, long look at myself, realized that maybe school wasn't for me at this point, because I was just
Mhm.
taking classes like biology and chemistry, things that I knew I wasn't good at and probably wouldn't pursue a career in. you know? Um, and so I, stopped going to school one semester, dropped out, and then sold my stuff and bought a ticket to Vietnam, a one-way ticket to Vietnam, and flew on over and kind of worked my way back. So, yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. As an avid traveler myself, and one who's like gone off on different ventures of studying, like that is so key when you take the time to actually like see what you really want to do.
Yeah, I think getting some world perspective, because at the point I never really had left Phoenix. I've gone to like visited other cities, but I never really saw the world. And I don't know, it seemed preposterous to me that I knew what I wanted to do in life if I hadn't even seen the outside walls of Phoenix. So that was it. Well, my beans are done, so I am
Okay.
ready to start grinding. Oh, I got rid of the Zoom call. Let's see. Is it back?
There we
That
go.
was I don't know
You're
what
back.
happened. So there we go. So I'm going to wet the paper. For me, I use a paper filter with my Chemex. I don't know, just tastes better. I feel part of me is self-conscious about the idea that I'm throwing away paper and I could get a reusable filter and save the turtles. But I don't know. It's a hard balance to walk.
Yeah, I mean,
So
like that one paper filter is not going to make or break us.
right. And I recycle them, so I feel a little better. But so how are you gonna brew it? You doing your Chemex as
So
well? You'll
I
pour
did
over.
it in the Chemex already,
Nice.
like 2 minutes before we went live here. And so I did it with a reusable filter and
Smart.
then had hot water in the kettle.
Don't worry, I'm not pouring this water just out on the ground. We live in the desert. There's very scarce water as is. I have plants out here, so we do some plants. So how I do my Chemex, I rinse the paper filter to kind of get rid of some of the papery taste that might still be there. And then I pour the grinds in. I make a little divot because it's a cone filter, and I want the water to spread evenly. And then I'm a very big coffee snob, and so I scale everything, I weigh everything, and it's just one of those things that I'm just trying to get better at.
Uh-huh.
So I used to, and I still do, and it's hypocritical. I make fun of people that are like this hardcore into coffee. And I'm like, God, you guys, it's just coffee. How could you? And then here I am with the scale, my grinder, like I got the whole setup.
It makes a difference though.
It does. And especially, I don't think the average person needs to go this far. I talk to people and they're like, do I need the water? Do I need the grinder? I'm like, no, you don't. But, I am trying to work my way to becoming a coffee professional. So
Right. And it makes a difference like for where you want to take your coffee adventures.
exactly. So yeah. How did you start Coffee with Bobbi? What was the inspiration for that? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I was in Houston, Texas, and I just had this moment. I would sit outside, have coffee every morning with my boyfriend. And then I was like, you know what? I really miss the coffee shops. 100%. Like we
Right.
used to travel almost 100% of the time. We'd be in new cities every week. And that was like sort of like my go-to place of I could always count on meeting somebody there, like somebody I had never met in real life prior. And it's turned out like I have friends all across the world because of it and
Right.
all these incredible stories. So, mid June, July, I was like, I miss people. Like, I need to be around more people. I was lucky, like, his family is a larger family, and we were always around nieces and nephews. But I was like, I just need to meet somebody different, like outside of our bubble. And
Yeah.
and so, I mean, it got to the point where I was going on runs and just talking to neighbors as I would like run past and learn people's names. And then I got inspiration. I was like, you know what? Why don't I start this? Like, we'll see where it ends up. We'll see where it transitions to. And I am so glad that I have started this.
Yeah, I think it's such a smart idea because you're absolutely right. Coffee shops are a place where you just get to meet people. Like it's a social place. It was my favorite thing. I'm with you. It was one of the biggest things I missed when quarantine hit and like coffee shop shut down. And like, yeah, I have the equipment at home, but it goes back to how much is equipment for professional coffee, or like what is the purpose of coffee drinking? If you have all the equipment, sure, you can get a pure coffee taste, but coffee, 90% of it is the connections that you make. And so I was so upset. And luckily, we got our mandates up and coffee shops were able to open up. And so I could like go back out and be like, hey, I missed you, and giving people hugs. And like, get off of me. So I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Took me a while to figure out I couldn't hug people. And
right.
Oh man, it's tough, but it's, yeah, I'm with you. I'm so glad that we, like coffee shops were able to kind of open back up safely and securely and allow us coffee lovers to go back and just love on other coffee lovers.
I know it's still here in Indiana. I mean, the coffee shops are opening, but in terms of like seating and stuff, it's not quite there, and everybody's still doing
Right.
drive-through. But one
Yeah.
day it's coming.
Right. We're lucky enough where, like I call it cold here, but it's probably like 60 right now. And a lot of the coffee shops here have like patios. And so it's a little easier to do social distancing. A lot of the coffee shops I've gone to, like it's every other table, it's the patio. So you can, still kind of get your coffee fix without feeling like you're putting anyone at danger. So
Definitely.
But, yeah, so it's tough though, because I miss coffee, especially since I started like working from home with Hendy's and everything like that. A lot of my working from home was my computer, coffee shop, going around meeting, roasters and owners, and then all of a sudden it was like, can't do that. And now I'm stuck at home, and I'm like, half my business is meeting coffee people.
Right.
This is gonna be tough.
I need to find a segue to do this.
Yeah. Well, good. How long has it been going on, Coffee with Bobbi?
We started the end of September was the first episode.
Nice. Yeah, you've been doing it every week, twice a week, something like that. I mean, it's been
at least twice a week. There was one week where I was on an event marketing project. So there was a week off, but yes, at least twice a week. This week's been 4 times, getting ready for the holidays and getting more content out there. So it's been great.
That's exciting. What do you have an end goal with Coffee with Bobbi, or is it just something to like kind of keep you sane without like going crazy? Like, because I'm with you, I need to talk to people otherwise I just go crazy. So do you have an end goal for coffee, or is it just like a super fun project you're doing?
Oh, goal as it is. I mean, I took a transition. A lot of people have heard the story, from going from event marketing for 10 plus years and living that on the road lifestyle to now, like, I've actually loved being in one city for like 5 straight months.
Right.
And, like, that is a whole new concept for myself and my boyfriend. Like, we haven't actually like rented a place for me, it's been 7 years. And
wow.
Like, literally, like, we're either like bouncing back and forth between parents' houses and between like a 2-week time span. And then, then the suitcase is moving, you're always going someplace, there's always another project. So like getting into this space of like, I really don't feel the need that I have to travel every week. And, and then this popped up with it, and I got into motivational speaking. End goal for Coffee with Bobbi, I mean, just to connect with more people and see where it goes and what it leads to. Who knows? This could be a new thing that sticks for a long time.
I think it's important too, because at least for me, and I get excited about a lot of stuff. When we connected on Instagram and we started talking about it, this was something that I was looking forward to. Like, life is kind of slow right now, everything's slowly grinding through, but I was just like, I got the Coffee with Bobbi. I told all my friends, I was like, I'm doing this thing on Friday with Bobbi. She's from Indiana. We're going to always so much fun. And so so for me, it was something to keep my hopes up. And so thank you for that. So I think it's, and I don't think I just speak for myself. I think there's a lot of people that, when you reach out to them and say, do you want to come on this Bobbi podcast? They're like, yeah. And it gives them something to look forward to. So,
right. And it gives me awesome. Something to look forward to too. So it's a two-way street. It's not just one person.
All right. So coffee's done. My brew is done. And it's, I got a good, I don't know if you can tell, it's a flat bed of grinds. That's kind of what you're looking for, to make sure that the coffee distributed evenly. You don't want like super hard coffee channels. Because like a river, water will always go through the river. It's harder to go through other stuff. And so in order to get all the coffee evenly, you want to end with a flat bed. And I actually did. And thank God I did, because we're live. And, I was just hoping it would go well, but who knows? So let me pour myself some coffee, and then we could talk about it.
Yeah.
So cheers. Here's to Coffee with Bobbi. This is exciting.
Cheers, Sam.
God, it's so good. Novela.
And it's so well balanced.
What's crazy is Ruben wasn't, I don't think he was like a roaster before this. Like, this is his first kind of roasting gig. I know he's helped out with like barista stuff. But he picked up roasting. He's been doing it, I think, for like maybe 2 years now, year and a half, something like that. And so, yeah. And so it's for me as someone who's been building my palate, it's crazy to see his Oaxaca coffee go from what it was a year ago, which was still really good, to like, this is easily the best like cup that I've ever had of his. So
yeah, this is so good. Man. Thanks, Ruben. Thanks, Sam, for bringing this coffee into my world. Like, for those of you who didn't see like the preview video to this, of like when I was talking about what exactly is in the Hendy's coffee box and these beans, like, no joke, the universe has a way of connecting us. And
I saw that.
I was talking about like how I missed like going to coffee plantations when I was actually in Oaxaca. And then this bag of beans came in the mail, and I was like, we didn't even plan it, guys.
Yeah. And it's, between my roasting partners, there's like probably 30 different varietals that I could have, that I could send. I really like their Oaxaca, and I was like, I want to impress Bobbi on this. And so when I called up Ruben, I said, I'm going on this podcast. Can you do a special batch for me? 2 bags. I'm going to send Bobbi one. I'm going to keep one. He said, yeah. And it was his Oaxaca. I was like, roaster's choice, pick it, but I trust you. So yeah, it's great. I'm very happy about this. So yeah, well, good. Yeah. So what do you want to talk about? Now that we have our coffee,
teach us how to like taste it, because we always see these notes that it says, and this one says dry fruit, citrus, and caramel on the bag. So how does the average coffee drinker, or even like one that loves coffee, figure out these notes?
Yeah. So it's the first step is you get a little bit. I've started when I train Frankie, who's the other roaster at Village Coffee, which is where I roast at, and also one of my other roasting partners. When we first started tasting coffee and I was working on his palate, you take a little bit and then you like slurp it. And so you kind of want to spray it over your tongue. It's easiest done with a spoon, where you take a spoon, you can kind of slurp it. But that allows all your taste buds to get it. Otherwise, the best way to taste coffee that I found as I'm working on my palate is I'll take a journal and I'll write down what I think it tastes like. Because you taste this and you know it tastes like berries. You might not know exactly what kind of berries, but you're like, that's a like berry flavored coffee. And coffee's flavors change as it cools down. So you'll get more of the notes as it cools down. You won't get it when it's super, super hot. And so the best way that you can kind of work on that is take a journal, write down what you think it tastes like right away. And it's okay if you're wrong. The idea is for you to start out to kind of figure out, can I tell a difference as it cools down? Put two coffees together, go to your local roaster, just get a small batch of like a heavier coffee, like an Ethiopian or something like that. And then a lighter coffee, like a Mexican, and taste them side by side and see if you can even just tell the difference. I've been working on my palate for 4 years. I can tell you when something tastes like apricots or caramel or chocolate, but I can't tell you, there's some coffee tasters out there that'll be like, yeah, that's Brazil. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. That's just like, you got to be in the game for decades, and nobody I think needs to get that far. But I think once you figure out what you like, so I'm not, I really like, I've gotten into kind of lighter notes, like the chocolatey, some berry and caramel of like what the Mexican coffees are. I've been on like a Mexican coffee high for the last like 6 months. So I know I like that. And so if I go into a roastery or a coffee shop and I say, I kind of like a more medium bodied with some chocolate or berry notes to it, they can, kind of narrow that down and give me a cup that I like. Versus something like when I was first starting out, Jima or Sumatra. Jima is an Ethiopian, Sumatra is a Indonesian. Those tend to be heavier bodied, earthy, like what you think of when it comes to coffee, like real heavy.
The
And I
super
kind of
dark roast.
right. So I liked those just because that was what I thought coffee was. And because especially if not brewed right with a berry coffee like this, it can almost get overwhelming and like taste sour because there's so much berry notes to it. So part of that is a well roasted coffee. If you roast it too light, you might get too much of those berry notes. If you brew it too fast, you might get some of those too. And so it's the grinds. It's a lot of stuff, but I don't want to scare anyone away from coffee. To get back to your question, if you're starting out with coffee and you want to figure out how to build your palate, start by taking notes on if you can even tell the difference between when you first brew it. Don't burn your mouth, wait like a minute, I guess, and then 5 minutes later and 10 minutes later, hopefully you're not going through a whole pot of coffee within 10 minutes. If you are, I'm not going to judge, just try not to do that, but take notes on that and then just start figuring that out. And then you can always go to a coffee shop and talk to a roaster or a barista and be like, hey, I bought your bag of Mexican Oaxaca beans. Can you tell me about it? I have some notes of what I think it is, but I want to make sure the terminology is right. Every roaster will love if you do that. So,
ooh, points to take. I'll definitely have to walk into some more roasters on that. How did you find your connections? Like when this idea started of Hendy's coffee boxes, and you roast currently, correct?
Yes.
And then did you do this as like a way to collaborate with more Arizona coffee roasters or some of your favorites?
Yeah. So it was when I came back from traveling, and I knew I wanted to do coffee. I live here in Phoenix, and so I looked around and I could have gotten a job at like a Starbucks or something, but I knew I wanted a coffee shop one day. And the best way, I knew when I started a coffee shop, whether it's in 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, it's going to be a small shop. I'm not going to start with a giant conglomerate coffee business. So I figured I should find a small shop to work at and learn how they run a small shop, because there's no way I can get to 15 stores if I don't even know how to run one. And so I found Village Coffee Roastery here in Scottsdale, talked to Lisa, who was the owner. I remember our interview process. We sat down and she asked me, so why do you want to work here? And I said, well, honestly, Lisa, I'm hoping to have my own coffee company one day, so I might be your competition. And she's like, ha, great, I love it, you're hired. I was like, oh, what did I get myself into? So
that's awesome.
And so she's been an amazing mentor in terms of starting Hendy's Coffee. So when I started working here, started in the kitchen making some of the breakfast foods and lunch foods and everything. And within a few months, showed my interest in roasting because we roast everything here. Talked to Nick, who was the current roaster. He trained me, took me on for about a year. We roasted together, and then I started roasting by myself. And now I've been roasting for about 4 years. 2 years ago, I brought on Frankie, who is kind of a younger guy who just wanted to get into roasting, and so he applied for the shop, and so I've been training him. So now it's Frankie and I have been roasting for the last 2 years on and off, switching. And so Hendy's Coffee Box was this idea where I wanted, obviously I have a lot of goals for what I want Hendy's coffee to be. Like when I'm 70 years old, 80, 90, 100, and I'm like on my deathbed and I'm like, I accomplished all this, I'm good. But believe it or not, I don't have $1 million or anything to start a coffee shop. And so I said, what's a small scale thing that I can start with my part-time jobs that isn't going to kill me, where I can still pay my bills, where I can kind of start slow. And so that's where the coffee box started. And the one thing that I loved about the idea immediately was, well, I couldn't go out and spend $10,000 on a roaster, but I love people. Why don't I just talk to different roasters and see if I can partner with them and like buy their coffee at, a wholesale price, put it in my box and up the box price by like $1, so I'm making $1 per box, and so I had to figure out. The tough thing was the logistics. My fiance, Lindsay, is a phenomenally smart woman, and she figured out all the logistics, and I'm not like that. I can't do that. I'm not good with math. I'm more ideas and people and execution. But in terms of getting from like A to B, it was Lindsay helped me out a lot. So I would not be here without her. And she's working right now because she's a hard worker. And so that was, what I had to kind of figure out was, okay, coffee box, low overhead. I got to buy boxes, which is like $1 or $2 a box. You can get them branded. You buy them, buy 200 or so from numerous different companies. I go to the roasters. I got to talk to them. Hey, I have this idea. The hardest thing was finding roasters around here that would believe in me, because especially with this year kind of being the pandemic and money being tight, most roasters don't make any money on wholesale coffee. They make very, very little, but all that goes to either wages for the roaster or the gas that they use in electricity. And so when I came to them and I'm like, hey, I want to buy some wholesale coffee, usually in order for them to make somewhat of a profit, you're trying to buy 20 or 30 or 50 pounds a month. I'm not at that scale yet. So I was like, I just want to buy 1 or 2 pounds a month. And I could see how that would be like, this kid just wants to buy coffee at a discounted price. Like he's not
You've
around.
got this new idea. I don't know about it.
So I went to a handful of roasters that said no, which is understandable. I don't hate them for that. But Lisa, my owner here, was the first one to say yes, which is remarkable to like have a boss in an industry work for them and pursue starting a company in that same industry and having them support you. Like I don't know. I don't have any friends that I've talked to that are like, yeah, my boss would be totally cool with me starting my own firm or something like that.
Right. Underneath them. Yeah.
Right. And so that's, but she's been super supportive, which is great. When I re-enrolled in some community college classes for like accounting and economics, just so I could learn how to run Lisa runs all her own numbers. She does all her own accounting. So she knows that. So I'd come in with my homework for my business and she'd be like, okay, here's how you do that. And so it was super helpful. So I found her first. And then immediately after I found Novela because Melissa and I went to high school together. And we were just talking coffee one day and she's like, oh, my husband roasts. I'm like, what? That's interesting that you say that because I'm looking for some roasts. So I went over, I actually did a podcast in January last year. I had an idea of starting my own podcast called What's Brewing. In the past year, I've done exactly one episode and it was with them and it was in January. So in the last 11 months, I've done nothing with it, but it was exciting. It was like, I had no idea what I was doing, but I recorded it and it was a fun conversation. So that's when you were like, come on my podcast. I was like, this would be so much fun. I have so much to learn in case I ever want to like go back to the podcast route.
Yeah. I mean, it is a total learning curve. And in the past few months, on the podcasting side, like I've I now have a microphone, and I was doing it on Instagram Live, and then it transitioned to Zoom to Facebook Live, and now it's got its own podcast on Apple and Spotify and other platforms. So it's just a huge learning curve, and I'm just
Yeah.
going with it.
How do you, I got a question because I've struggled
Yeah.
with this in terms of like starting something small. Like I wanted to start, what's brewing the podcast. But I spent so much time diving into how to do it that I think I sacrificed actually doing it, and that hindered me. And that's why I don't think it moved. So there's a lot of reasons why it didn't work out. But how do you balance that where obviously you're a professional and you want to give the best quality possible and, in the best way possible. But I assume you also know that you can't just sit around and do research all day. You actually have to go out and do some action. So how do you find that balance with that? Or how did you find that balance with that?
Oh, so a big thing. So being in the creative field for a while, from event marketing to photography to, digital marketing, a huge hindrance. And not only for like smaller businesses, everyday people, but even like talking influencers and large brands, a huge thing that we all deal with is the perfectionist syndrome. Of like, it's got to be the best from the very beginning. I can't put something out because, I can't post a photo on Instagram because the white balance is off, or this filter looks too bad. And having had that in the past where like I know that was a roadblock. I mean, the other day on my Instagram feed, the house lights in our house are more amber orange tint. And like I looked red, but I was okay with it because it was one of those like in the moment photos that like you could put it in Lightroom all you wanted. And this was as color corrected as it was going to get. But a huge thing is perfectionist syndrome. And for me, it's like just trying it. You can Google and find out like what's the best way or the best platform to host your podcast on. And like I looked that up and compared, Anchor to Transistor to a couple of other ones to decide where I wanted to host it. But it wasn't one of these things where I was going to get tied up into, I'm going to spend a week on this and stop myself from actually creating the content and doing it meanwhile.
Right. I get that. The perfectionist syndrome it's real. I mean, it's especially because this year I started getting into coffee photography. I started a side little coffee photography Instagram just to support the local coffee shops here. And there'd be like a week where I wouldn't post something. I'd go in and do a shoot for like a coffee company, and I wouldn't post any photos because I was still editing them and I really wanted to. And it's, I feel that real because it's, so I launched this year, right? I launched Hendy's. My first shipment was like December 31st because I promised myself I'd get the first box out before January 1st of this year. Okay. Well, the year before that, I had spent so much time building my website, which you go on Squarespace or Wix or Shopify, like it's done within 5 minutes. But I wanted to build it right. My good friend Alex runs a marketing brand here in Phoenix called Brand Loyal. He does website design and everything. I reached out to him. He's way too expensive for my pocket because he does like big brands.
Right.
But he told me, he said, I think it's beneficial. And he was right. If I learned how to build my own website, my coffee box website. So that way, when I'm talking to roasters, an idea that could be, or a business opportunity that could be is, hey, Bobbi's Coffee Roastery. Do you want to partner with me? Great. We figure that out. And then it's also like, oh, do you want to do your own subscription box for your customers? And then you could be like, oh, possibly be like, well, I can build you that website. I already know how, so you don't have to worry about that. So he was right. It would give me some experience, but man, I was like, I don't like how this looks, or I really want this picture a little lower, or this text doesn't look. And it was tough. I think, it's the biggest struggles I had this year in my first year of business is perfectionism. And then I think I tried to juggle too much, which is weird because as an entrepreneur, I know you have to juggle a lot, but there's a lot to do.
Yeah. And it's not only like the perfectionist syndrome, but also, you have the fear of judgment. somebody on the other end that you don't know the face of that's going to come in and be like, oh, well, they're not going to like this, or what if this looks weird to them on my website? But I want to just say this, like,
yes,
I've been in some of those places before, when I was doing photography, part-time into full-time and working with people. And then where I'm at today and what I've learned, like, I don't even have my own website right now. I have a domain. Like, I've got domains, I've got everything. And somebody messaged me, Anchal, I think, on Instagram. And she was like, I need someplace to put all these links up. And she was like, Linktree, it's free. And this is like a 17-year-old.
Wonderful.
Yeah, a 17-year-old who has her own podcast. And I was like, you're a genius. Like, why didn't I think of this? Like, I needed you to say this and just put all the links together until it comes time to like actually sit down and develop a website, for everything. I was like, this is perfect. So yeah, it's just going through it and not letting that fear creep in as it always does.
Yeah. And these young people, they know what they're doing. Cause when I found Linktree, I was like, this is a saving grace. This is amazing. And it's, looking back, of course, hindsight's 2020, what would I have done differently in the, last year and whatnot, but it's, what do you want to do in the next year? Let's focus on 2021. 2020 is behind us in like a week, 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
What is Bobbi Klein doing in 2021? I'm excited. I want to know.
Ooh, this is such a great question. And I love this conversation because normally it's like me leading it, but this is total collaboration, like normal coffee combo here. 2021, I'm ready to find a house.
Nice.
Whether it's renting, whether it's buying, whether it's building. I don't know where it's going to be. But yeah, I'm ready to like stop the suitcase from moving every week. Or
how has that transition? Do you enjoy? Because I know you've traveled a lot, and this year you've been in one place. Do you enjoy it? Was it a weird adjustment? How was that?
Ooh, I loved it. My boyfriend had a huge hard time transitioning to it. Yeah. Like, I love to cook. I love being in the kitchen. Like, this is the longest that we have gone, like, not ordering takeout, not going to restaurants. And everybody else around us is like, you're making Bobbi cook again? And I'm like, no, I actually love to cook. Like, I'll make dinner for the whole family. This is what I'm cooking. Are you going to eat it? And it's been one of these like great blessings. And we also, I think it was February, before the lockdowns hit, or right before February, March, we had gotten off of a project with the Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and then we were back here in Indianapolis at my parents', and I was like, okay, there's this deal that's happening. A weighted blanket store is going out of business. Like, these are $300 20-pound weighted blankets.
Wow.
Like, all I have to do is pay for shipping. And he was like, I was like, it's only $50. Like, I'm going to grab one. And in his mind was like, if we're traveling, like, where are we going to put a 20-pound blanket? Like, we can't check a blanket with us and all stuff. I'm like, it can live here. Like, if we're on the road, like, he was like, whatever, I don't care. But yeah, definitely like ready for a house. Like, we've gotten kitchen stuff. We're ready to make that move. He made a coffee table the other day, so just getting into that mental space and like doing more stuff that we love to do. Yeah. 2021. So for me, it's like doing more of the coffee show and more speaking engagements, to like finding that passion that ignites you. And I feel like that adjusts over time. Like, when I was doing photography, I really enjoyed that. And then like life changes and so forth, you transition, and this is where I'm at today. Yeah. So, what about you? No. What does 2021 look like for you?
It's crazy that you mentioned that, because Lindsay and I just bought a house. And we will be moving in 2021. It's a new build. It's out west in, kind of West Phoenix. And we have an appointment on Monday to go to the design studio where Lindsay's so artsy. And this is like, I envy her for it, but also I don't think I would have time to be artsy because I would just dive into it. So the design studio, when you're building this house, you get to pick the tiles and the backsplash and the little, I don't know, ceiling. I don't know what you get to pick, but so we have like a 4-hour meeting on Monday with the design person, where we get to pick all the granite on the countertops and stuff. So that's a big deal for us. And then, we were hoping to get married this next year, but with quarantine and everything, all the weddings got pushed back a year. And so we're actually looking at 2022. So it kind of works out that this year, is the house. The next year is the wedding. And then, instead of all of it being in like 1 year, because I feel like that would just be complete. And then especially with Hendy's Coffee being in its second year, and like now that I've got some momentum and movement, and I'm actually I'm putting more hours into it, I feel like it would be a lot. This
Oh
next
yeah,
year.
it gets to be like one of these sort of like, I don't want to call it a nightmare, but it's like you've got the wedding planning, and I know from the event side, and like some of my close friends got married a few years ago, but I remember it was so funny, like they were planning a wedding in Indiana from Paris, and like I would be the liaison for them to like go check out vendors and
Like,
everything else, and then like I would try to call in, and they're like, oh, we can't, we're trying to do like seating arrangements, and this person can't sit next. I'm like, you guys are like blowing my mind. Like, why do I want to sign up for this?
Yeah, it's insane. And so that's so I'm glad that it's a little spread out, which is kind of nice. We won't kill each other trying to like decorate the house and plan the wedding and do everything, because we're gonna get married in Rochester, New York, because that's where she's from originally.
Okay.
It's gonna be like it's out on an apple orchard, like the leaves will be changing, it's gonna be fall time. I know nothing. Oh yeah, I know nothing about that, because being in the desert, we don't have anything that changes. It just doesn't get as hot. So but we went out and visited some of her friends and family out there this September or October or something, so I got to see like what it would look like. And it was real pretty. So that's what I've got for 2021. And then just I was as I was thinking about our podcast last night, I started making a list of what I really want to focus on for 2021 for Hendy's Coffee. Because like I said, I feel like I'm juggling a whole bunch of stuff. And as an entrepreneur, and it's really Lindsay and I running this business, and she's a pharmacist, so she's got hard, long hours at the hospital anyway. I said, instead of trying to do a billion things kind of okay, I'm like trying to pick like 5 or 6 that I really want to focus on. Because if I feel like if I can get that base down, then the next year, 2022, I could pick another 5 things. Because I don't know, I had this thought last night that I have a long-term plan for Hendy's Coffee. I plan on doing this forever. So I'm not planning on quitting anytime soon. But at the same time, I'm like, I have to get everything done immediately. So like last night, I just kind of looked at myself in the mirror. I'm like, that's probably one of the stupidest things I've ever thought.
This is true. Like take it, like that's what I've learned this year, is how to slow down and how to be okay with life slowing down and going with the flow of what happens. And at times people are like, how can you go from like 0 to 100 and then drop right back down to 0? And that's what happened in an event life. You would work 70 plus hour weeks, and then for 3 months straight. And then you'd be like, okay, this is cool. I'm taking a month off. Like I'm going to Costa Rica. I'll see you guys later. Right. And that's what happened. And you were down to 0 for a month. And then you get a call and you go, okay, well, I guess I'm hitting the road. So it's another 70 plus hour weeks for another month or 6 months, Yeah. But learning to be okay with like the way the pace is going and moving in that flow is
I get that. I for the last like 2-3 years, I worked like 3 different part-time jobs. I mean, it was up at 4 or 5 a.m. in bed at 10 a.m. Like I can tell you, my sleep schedule was not happy with me, but it was constant because I was saving up money to launch Hendy's and to keep that going and to pay the bills. And then all of a sudden, boom, like March, April, One of the places I was working closed, so I lost those hours.
Mhm.
I was a youth minister at my church. I transitioned over to online ministry because our church is doing like a lot of online stuff. And I
Right.
like doing marketing stuff. So my middle school minister took over all the high school stuff, and I jumped onto the marketing team and started doing that. But that was less hours. So it's like, boom, one job is gone. Boom, half the hours over at the church is gone, which I'm fine. I'm not complaining, but it was just, I do like, I'd roast, and then all of a sudden it's like 2 p.m. and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like I go home and Lindsay's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
I'm working on Hendy's. That's what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
yeah. I gotta go to another coffee shop. And so, yeah, it's from your perspective, because it's, as you know, as a business owner, it's hard to kind of get outside perspective, because I'm like 100% neck deep into Hendy's and coffee 24/7 every day, 365. From your perspective, as just an avid coffee lover, what would you recommend I focus on in the next year? Since you've been in the professional space,
Ooh.
I want to know, because I'm so like deep into my own stuff that I sometimes forget to actually listen to other people, which is, I'm working on that. So,
No,
what do you think?
definitely the collaborations. If you're having an issue with like time and
Mhm.
delegating different tasks, like for instance, I know for a fact I've built stuff like this, and it is time consuming when it's a completely flat box to fold it and to package it. I mean, I've had to fill tons of
Absolutely
these
right.
different things for freebies and hand them
Yep.
out to people. Uh, reach
But
out, like
nobody
post.
thinks about that. Nobody thinks about how, like, I spend like half an hour twice a month folding boxes.
Yeah, because like for those of you who don't know, this box doesn't start out like this. It starts even flatter than this.
Yeah.
Like, um, find an intern, you know,
Okay.
like even reach out to the people who are at your church, or, post it on your Instagram. There's got to be some kids who are still hanging out at coffee shops. If you're
That's
hanging
right.
out there, like just
That's
start
that's a
talking
good
to
point.
them. And they, just like how the owner of Village Coffee like sort of brought you on under her wing,
Hmm.
you can do that with somebody else and just bring it to life. um, I will say this: the one
Yeah.
thing that I noticed that sets you apart 100% is the personalization.
You know
Like,
where I got that idea from? It was I'd go to the YMCA to work out, and there was this guy, Fred, kind of this older gentleman, who started a grocery chain here. He's one of the founders. It's called AJ's
mhm.
grocery store. And when they started in the 90s, they had a little small, like 1 pound coffee roaster. And you could go and like, request a bag of Brazil, and they would roast it for you and then go shopping. And they would write the name, like, for Bobby on the bag. And they stopped doing that, but he said it was just so much fun to do that. I was like, I think I want to do that. And so that I started that immediately with my first box. I was like, I'm going to write the name of the person on the box, because I still find value in handwritten notes, like you saw in the picture, of myself, Ruben, and
Yeah,
Melissa.
here it is for those of
Yeah.
you who didn't see the video. And it is handwritten with the story. I know it's hard to read and it's probably backwards. But like these two keys, and I just noticed when I had the box sitting like this and I could see the label. Like at the bottom, it says, "Thank you, love the Hindy's coffee team." Like nobody is doing that right now that I
Yeah.
know of. And I've
It's
got,
so it's those little touches that I just enjoy doing, and I think it's fun. So I'm glad you appreciate that, because it took forever to figure out how to write that little note on the bottom. I mean, it's super simple, but I just couldn't figure it out for the longest time because I'm an idiot probably.
no,
But
I
it was
mean, I send stuff out on eBay and everything else, so I
yeah.
don't even know what it is.
So yeah, well, that was I'm glad you appreciate that, because that's
But yeah, like all the touches, and I'll show everybody that came in this, from the additional stickers to share to like the notes on where the coffee originated from, the photo like I shared, and also the explanation on the coffee scoop. Like it's hard to see here, but it comes with the coffee scoop. And like it says, "Hi, I'm your coffee scoop." Like, you know how many, like, this sounds like to normal people, you're like, of course it's a coffee scoop. You don't have to
Right.
tell me how to make my coffee. But it tells the perfect ratio. And I don't know, there's so many people out there who are always like, I don't know how to make the perfect cup of coffee, or why does your coffee taste so much better than the way I make coffee? And, you know, they're not reading the back of whatever bag of beans that they bought
Yeah.
on like what the ratio is supposed to be. They're like, well, I've done this forever. Let me just take out my tablespoon and just start counting
Right.
scoops until it looks right.
It's 2 scoops and a little over. Like, yeah,
Right.
that's
Like, oh, just like, and I've been a victim of that. Like, I'm not saying anything
you
wrong.
eyeball it. Yeah.
Like, I've done that before. When you don't have proper scoops or anything, but like some of this stuff, yeah, I love it. I love what
Yeah.
you're doing with Hindies, but
Yeah.
if you need more help on the other side, finding
Absolutely.
they can cut
smart
out
idea.
stickers, they can package boxes for you.
Yeah. Just those little things that add up over time. That's true. Okay. Maybe I'll do that because it is tough running everything by yourself, you know.
Right. And
So
that,
especially as you expand and you're like, all right, like, so I'm running 2 websites right now. I'll plug my website because I can.
yeah.
My website is hendyscoffee.com. It's on the side of the box. I have a second website that I'm kind of running things through as well, hendyscoffeebox.com. That's a Shopify deal because I wanted to work on the back end of my hendyscoffee.com. That's through WordPress. That's the website that I built myself. So there was some like structural changes in like the back end that I wanted to work on. And so I pointed like the domain to hendyscoffeebox.com, which is a Shopify, and that's way easier. It looks good on mobile, like it does all that stuff, but it doesn't do everything that I wanted it to do with that. I can't tell you how many times in the last 2 months I've had to get on the tech help with GoDaddy because I've messed something up, like the DNS pointing, the domains, the IP. It's so much tech stuff. So I've had to go on and they're like, "Hi, Sam." I'm like, can you just reset it to whatever I did last night?" And so I reset it. It works. So I'm like, all right, let me try this again. I do it and I mess something else up. And so that's yeah, Lindsay and I have talked about the first person that I probably hire will be a tech person where I can just be like, make sure the website doesn't crash. Cause at that point, that's the lowest bar that I can go. But that's like something that I keep messing because I can't run an e-commerce business with no website. Like that's just
right. Unless you start doing like PayPal orders or something
right.
like that.
Yeah. And I've got like a Square account where I can send invoices and whatnot, but it's still, yeah, technology's tough, but I've had a blast running this year. Like it's been
That's
a
awesome.
super fun journey. So despite the headaches and the late nights with GoDaddy and it's really been fun. I'm really glad I did this.
Well, an idea that just came to mind is, you know, since you're still at this like early stage of it and getting it to that next level, have you thought about putting like Hendy's Coffee Box on Facebook Marketplace?
No, I have not.
And you could do it like
actually, yeah.
as the price of it for one box. And I don't know how the Facebook algorithm works.
Right.
If you put a website in the description of it, but you could put like message me for more info and then direct them to it.
I never thought about it. That's a really smart idea, actually, because I look on Facebook Marketplace just for my next coffee journey is going to be I want to start a coffee trailer, like get an old horse trailer and refit it to be. And so I've looked on Facebook Marketplace for like horse trailers and I've like figured out how to navigate it. I've never thought about putting Hendy's Coffee Box on it. I might try to do that. That might be one of my 2021 things and just play around with it and even see how that goes.
And then click offer shipping on it. So then not only does it go to Arizona and Scottsdale area, it goes all over the place. Whoever
everywhere
searches for coffee.
That's a smart idea. Huh. Okay.
There you go. New
there you
thing.
go. Boom.
Get it done by January 2nd. I'm going to check in.
You're going to call me back.
Yeah. I mean, it literally only takes like 5 minutes to post it.
That's right.
So.
I could do that. Yeah. That's a good idea. Well, hey, what's our time? I feel like I
Yeah,
don't
we're
want to go
almost at
over.
an hour.
Okay.
As we begin to wrap up here,
Yes.
because I know everybody's got things to do today. What's been one of the biggest blessings for you this year?
Um, the people that have supported me, it's Lindsay's family is a very educated family. They're all super smart, like doctorates and masters. And I'm a college dropout that's trying to start my own little coffee business. So her family has been super, super supportive of that, that's a blessing. Lisa helping me with like accounting homework, knowing that it's for my business, that if it explodes and, I probably won't work here anymore because I'd have to go full time. Lindsay, 100%. We got engaged in February, like right before
Congrats on
everything shut
that.
down.
I was just going to
Thank
tell
you.
you.
Yeah. And so that was, I don't know, there's been a lot of people blessing in my life. A lot of things have gone right for me. A lot of things, I don't really have any complaints this year. So between the support of Lisa, between the support of like Lindsay's family and all my friends, my best friend Zach just had his first kid. That's a blessing. And so I got to go see them for Thanksgiving, this cute little Noah kid. So I don't know, looking back on this year, there's nothing that I can complain about. I take on, you've probably heard Gary Vee talk about it, where there's like 5 or 6 people in his life that as long as they're healthy and okay, life's good. I heard that and I'm like, I could go with that. And so I've started doing that over the last 2 years, where I try not to complain about things as long as Lindsay's healthy and I'm healthy and Zach is healthy with his new kid. And I'm like, life's good. Life will keep going. So, I've been blessed.
I love it. This year has been full of blessings. Yes, it's been up and downs, but when you look at it, there's so many things to still be grateful for. And I'm so glad to hear. Where can we find more info out about you? What are your social handles and website again?
Yes. So everything is Hendy's Coffee. Hendy's is Hendys coffee. So my last name is Henderson. So it's short for Henderson. It's Hendy's. Lindsay actually came up with that. My original name for my coffee company was Taste Coffee Co. I was like so gung ho about it. I was like, man, this is going to be good. And she heard that. She's like, that's a dumb name. And I was like, well, I thought it was kind of a cool name. And she's like, what about like Hendy's Coffee? And I was like, what? And I really liked it, but I didn't want to admit it. And I was like, no. Well, I'll think about it. Maybe it'll grow on me. I'm upset that I didn't think of that first. And so it's Hendy's Coffee, Hendys Coffee, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. The email is hello@hendyscoffee.com. I don't know. I thought that was kind of fun. And so if you have any questions on that, hendyscoffee.com is my main website, but also hendyscoffeebox.com will work. Just if you go on at like 2 a.m., hendyscoffee.com might not work because I've shut it down so I can like work on it. But it's and I don't dare try to point the domain anymore after the last 2 months of not being able to do it correctly. And then me not even asking them to do it. So Hendy's Coffee, everything Hendy's Coffee. I've got my shirt, Hendy's Coffee right there. It's an HC. Like I said, I almost wore my Novela shirt, but I was like, I don't want to like overwhelmingly be like, go Novela, because I do all day. But I was like, I should at some level support my own business. So,
well, I'll support both of them.
Good.
Novela Coffee Roasters, your Oaxacan beans have been amazing. And I am so glad you went with salmon on this and decided to make this roast up. You brought so much joy to my life this week, and it will continue because this is the first batch that I made of many. Sam, I'll put all of your social media links and website in all of the show notes in the comments. You can find more info out about Sam and Hendy's Coffee. Keep doing what you do. Like, seriously, this is incredible. The coffee is so good. You have a way of bringing like the best beans out. And I know this is just like one box that I've gotten, but I know like from your level of doing it, it's like you're picking la creme de la creme.
Yeah. I taste every batch. So I make sure that it's good quality. And like Novela is phenomenal. So I might have just started with the best. So who knows? Your next bag might not be super good, but
Oh, I doubt that because I'm sure you're going to include one of your bags that you've made coming up. So
absolutely, you betcha. So yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I was worried, because I was listening to your other podcasts and like with other business people that are like more well established and like doing. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm in my first year. I haven't really done much. So let's, hopefully I can make this. So it's, I really appreciate you having faith in me and taking time out to talk to me. It means a lot to me.
oh,
So
well,
thank you, Bobbi.
thank you so much for coming on today, Sam. For everybody who is listening and watching this today, I encourage you to go out and support your local coffee shop today. Buy a bag of beans, do something local, buy a cup of coffee, local, I don't know, maybe you're like me and get an Americano with a little bit of steamed coconut milk and extra foam today. I hope
Yeah,
you guys have an amazing weekend. And that is a wrap on today's episode of Coffee with Bobbi with Sam Henderson.
perfect.
Have an amazing day, guys. Take
Thank you,
care.
Bobbi.